obligation to protect those buildings.
Yeah.
I want to confirm that before I say it.
Yeah. So maybe you were thinking we would have that conversation with them in the fall at this point.
Okay.
It's up to you.
Yeah.
Maybe.
check. 1, 2, check, check. Check, check, check. Check, check. 1, 2, 1, 2, check, check. Check. Test. 1, 2, 1, 2, check, check. Check, check. 1, 2, check. Test. Test. Test, test, test. Test. Test, test. Check, check. Check, 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 check. Test. Test, test. 1, 2, 1, 2, test. Test, test, test. Check, check. 1, 2, 1, 2, check, check. Check, check, check. 1, 2, 1, 2, check, check, check. Check, 1, 2, check, check. Hello? Check. Check. 1, 2, 1, 2, check, check. 1, 2, 1, 2, check, check, check.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is our Tuesday, April 2nd, regular Board of County Commissioners work session. And on our agenda, we're at our memos of interest. John?
Yeah, our first memo of interest is a facilities and site assessment update. We have Jody Smith and Jack Wheeler in. Talk us through that.
I'll just give you a quick introduction. We are here to talk about where we're at with the facilities and site assessment, give you an update. About a year ago, the board directed us to go and start researching how to remodel and redevelop this building, and then to look at other long-term plans for the next 10 to 15 years. And since that time, we came across a short-term immediate need that needed to happen over at the courthouse with the sheriff's office and accommodating some space over there. And then we've also had an opportunity to look at whether or not we need to make recommendations to purchase the Kansas property, and then what other build-out opportunities we might have on property that we already own. So that was kind of where we were at. We do have in your memo a description of some of the immediate needs and some solutions that we found at the courthouse. We're happy to answer any questions on that specifically. During that process, we did work with the city assets management team. Both Jack and I did. We worked with the Aspen Police Department, the Sheriff's Office, the DA, the probation, and the court system. So everybody has buy-in. Everybody likes the solutions that we've worked towards. Everybody's in agreement for the most part. And then lastly, Jack went out to request for proposal for the design services for the Courthouse Plaza. We made a selection yesterday. We will be entering that contract and getting underway, so we'll be coming to you more often to talk about what those options are and where we go with that planning for the remodel of this facility. And then also looking at the bigger picture and long-term plans to move forward with not expansion, but just how we better use our own properties and the facilities that we have currently.
So Jody or Jack, with the remodel of the courthouse and Plaza 1, Plaza 3, are we also incorporating the energy upgrades? Remember we had that assessment about 2 years ago, and we decided that we would handle the construction in-house versus having that company do that. So that's all gets incorporated in the RFP.
The RFP was very specific that the team have experience in sustainability and renewable energy, and as well as LEED certification. So we're going to look at everything and make a decision once they're going to create a menu for us, and we're going to be able to select what we want to do or we don't want to do. But sustainability, energy efficiency, all of that is a big part of the design process.
The original work that we hired that firm for identify areas for energy efficiency improvements.
And I think I can answer that. We have been implementing, we're well into that project. We're actually almost done with the whole energy efficiency project for all the buildings except for the Courthouse Plaza. So this week we're coming in and doing some water conservation, changing out plumbing, so we have better flushing toilets that are more efficient, those kinds of things. But the lighting upgrades have been done throughout the whole system. We do have the energy monitoring program that will be coming online shortly, so that we can actually see what we're saving. So that's been done, and I think just the focus will be to bring to incorporate the same whatever we can do for this building to make sure that we're being energy efficient.
George, you might recall that when we made the decision to move forward with that energy performance contracting, we actually narrowed the scope of the projects, not just based on this building, but also based on projects that had a positive return on investment over the expected life of the improvement. during the retreat, we had talked about, should we be making additional investments for energy conservation above and beyond those considerations of return on investment and conservation. And so this plan will give you some more of those menu choices. It'll give the board some more of those choices and what they'd mean in terms of energy conservation moving forward, so we can have a little bit broader discussion than we did that first time around.
Good. Rachel?
Yeah, thanks for being here today. I noted in the memo that you felt you had identified space for up to 50,000 additional square feet. Now, first to say, especially for our grassroots audience, I don't think anyone thinks we need that kind of space, and not even sure how or when we need additional space now. But I'm kind of wondering, where was those locations identified? Because if there ever was, real additions or rebuilding of this sort of building, I'm sure we'd need to go to a public vote, a bond. And so those plans would have to be very copacetic with the voters' view of the county building and this civic area. And so I just want to make sure we're not counting chickens that will never hatch.
The square footage that we've identified is to utilize the parking area back here to do up to an 18,000 square foot addition on this building. There is a footprint there that's large enough. All of the options that I'm going to go through here, we've talked to the representative county or city and planning departments, and they agree that there is viable square footage to be developed there. Also, we have the 5,000 square feet at the Elgibel Tree Farm in the Eagle County complex there. Public Works, we feel conservatively that we can, with the proper master planning in that area, we can do another 10,000 square feet at least. The jail basement is underutilized, and if we built it out properly, there's 8,000 square feet there. And the jail was built originally for a second floor, and there can be an additional 8,000 square feet put on there, and that totals 49,000 square feet.
Thank you. I was just kind of wondering what that breakdown was.
Michael?
When we went through our facilities assessment, one of the guiding principles of that assessment was that there was a certain standard square footage for someone occupying an office and air exchange and light and that whole thing. And so when we change these offices and we do this, are we going to use those kind of standards?
We have, as part of the RFP, we asked for specialty space planners that are cutting edge, because there's a lot of new things that are going on with space planning for commercial spaces, office spaces right now, and what the end user is going to need in the next 5 years, the next 10 years, and planning spaces for that. So we will be taking all those things into consideration. It may not look like what we're used to having it look like, but yes, we will be. The interior space programming is one of the most important items in the planning process.
Yeah, I mean, there are people occupying essentially closets right now, and I'd hate to just have more closets.
Right. We're looking to more open floor plans with flexibility, with separate meeting rooms, touchdown spaces, things like that.
We're really looking at that flexibility so that we're not taking a wall down and adding a wall later. So we really want to be really thoughtful about how we're planning this for the future so that we can make things work for anybody.
Any other questions? Steve?
Adding square footage of Public Works, I could see that could help Down Valley people on their commute, not having to come clear into town. Would there be, do you envision any shifting departments, so some people who are working up in this area now would be working down there, or would it just be expanding Public Works area?
I think it's safe to say that as we go through this process, everything's on the table, and we don't know where it's going to land at this point.
We don't have any preconceived or ideas of put A here and B there.
Okay.
We're really just trying to be an open slate to see what the professionals.
So you could put 10,000 square feet out the Public Works, or, 10,000, not knowing exactly what it would be used for. That's what you're looking at.
Hopefully by then we would know what we want to use.
Right, oh, for sure, yeah.
And see, the point of that exercise was, we had this almost vacant piece of property next to us, and the real question is, did we need to put our investment there for the future, or did we have adequate square footage to address future needs? And clearly with the square footage we've identified, we feel like we have adequate existing properties to meet those needs, but this next step is then really getting into more detail about how could you best use that space and who should be using it from a service perspective in those areas, because I think there's a desire to keep core functions, at least that was a policy in the previous planning effort here in the downtown core, but there are obviously other functions that may not be as visible or publicly facing that would maybe make sense to have at a satellite location. So that's all on the table.
Okay.
Yep.
Any other questions? Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, the next memo of interest, I believe we have Kurt Dahl and Suzanne. Are you here for this one also? All right. This is following up on questions that were raised, I believe, during open discussion in response to a letter we received from the Colorado Department of Health and Environment concerning their approval of plans to have soils landfilled at our landfill, and it raised questions then about what had happened in our land use process and how the soil removal was being monitored. And Kurt, I'll turn it over to you from there.
The approval letter in December, just to add on to John's, was an approval letter for an additional 3,000 cubic yards to go to the county landfill. The county, the State Health Department had already approved additional materials. I'm not going to recall off the top of my head the amount. I think it was over 10,000 cubic yards to go to the county landfill for disposal. So, in part of the process, part of the question being asked was the discussion of the contaminated soils, and Suzanne graciously wrote that piece for me on the land use approvals. So I conned her into coming to help with the discussion. The other piece that happened after our meeting was that I met with the senior staff along with Susan Pearson, county, I don't remember her title now. It's not engineer, it's
Zoning officer.
Zoning officer, thank you. We met with our senior staff to discuss the soils management plan, and they have a process in which they're going through monitoring to make sure that they're in compliance with that plan that was approved. So, and based on the information they gave us, they are in compliance with it. The one thing that did change was their environmental consultant is now emailing me the monthly reports, his monthly compliance reports that he gives to the Music Association, so that I'm in the loop now with them and on the compliance piece. So with that, do you guys have questions about the MOI? Do you need...
Michael?
So it says when the initial permits were submitted, the issue of potentially contaminated soils was raised. This is I think on page 1, under third paragraph, under background. Mm-hmm. So who raised that issue?
That comes in my part of the thing, and I don't remember if it was raised on our end or the applicant, was acknowledging that there were contaminated soils. I remember that the testing occurred at the time. I guess I don't know the answer about how it was raised at the time. But that was really when it was first identified in a more technical form, as opposed to earlier during the master plan when we sort of said there was an old line there, there's the potential for contamination, but at that point no studies had been done. So I think my point here was that that was really the first time that testing occurred, and actual contamination was identified.
So that was identified in the Keno Gulch area, and then subsequently, there were other areas of the school that were identified with?
Right, they've done a more comprehensive testing throughout the campus to determine where they have contamination. And I think it was actually, that was probably about the point, once they had done that more comprehensive testing, when they started the move towards, let's look at trying to relocate the Country Day School off campus for a year, in order to not only do a lot of the work at one time, but also just to take away that as a safety concern at all, while they were working in those areas.
Yeah, I mean, looking at the school now, there was no hope of having children on that campus.
Well, it would have been a much more piecemeal project. I mean, they would have, they could not have done as much as they're doing out there in one season.
Right.
They would have done the lower school building, they would have, had to break it up into different
Because
phases.
the entire campus now is involved in construction.
Right.
Yes. So it's 13,000, how much has been taken to the landfill to date?
Brian Pettit and I talked about this there, and they've actually submitted now with the State Health Department for some additional materials. They had initially anticipated being able to use some of the material for bedding for its new water lines. That was not approved, and so they needed to haul that material off.
Good.
So I believe there was 12,000 or somewhere thereabouts that I recall we discussed. 13 has been approved, and I think they're asking for an additional, I believe it was 5. I'd have to check. I can give you the exact amount. I haven't received a letter yet. That was just a phone conversation with the Music Association. So I believe that's about where it stands. I can get the exact numbers for you, though, if you
So
need.
we're expecting approximately 18,000 cubic yards of contaminated soil to be moved to the landfill?
Somewhere thereabouts. Let me ask Brian Pettit to actually get the exact number, since I don't know the additional amount that they're asking for now with the additional soils.
That's it for
Steve? The debris flow that came down Keno Gulch, was that from mine tailings farther up on Aspen Mountain, or was it just natural material from a gully washer kind of downburst, or what? Or does anybody know really?
My understanding is that, it was a gully washer, it was a debris flow. But because of what had occurred lower on the site in terms of the previous mining, the materials that came down with that, some of the materials that came down were part of the contaminated soils from mining era. And that, some of that landed all the way down into the pond. And so they found contaminated materials.
So in the mitigation work that the campus is doing now on Keno Gulch, is that to prevent a further occurrence, or is it to stop it up at the source, or more at the next
channel of
level?
Keno Gulch has been worked on to improve. So basically, if there is another debris flow, it will stay in the channel and not go towards any of the buildings on the campus. That was, I think, the biggest issue with that one, was not only did the debris come down, but it directed straight into the buildings and the pond. So now the channel has been improved such that any flow that comes down will go away from any of the buildings.
So it'll go into Castle Creek, or where does it?
Eventually, that's where it would have gone in the past too. That would be its natural flow path. This does direct it, sends it more, to the down valley of where the buildings are, and where any development will be occurring. But there is, the bottom of that gully eventually runs down into Castle Creek.
George?
Yeah, Rachel?
Yeah, I think the two things, to further elaborate on that, Steve, there is a containment vault that is part of that program as well. Is that still the case with the channel? There is a catchment of some sort? That's where this issue first came up with us, was reviewing that containment had changed.
The change that occurred there was actually, they were originally going to have parking on the other side and a bridge that went over it, so it was going to be culverted so they could bring vehicles over the top of the channel. And they eliminated that parking, and so we're able to get rid of that culvert, because and they said they could make the culvert work to still, pass all of the material, but by not having it, it was an improvement, so you didn't even have to worry about that being but there's no basin below that to catch it. I mean, basically there is, an area between there and, when you finally get down to Castle Creek, but there's no basin being constructed at the bottom of that to catch material.
Yeah, I
It's
think
basically at that point, it just disperses.
I think, again, that was one of the issues that we heard about, that there had been a change in that mitigation and flow management plan, and had some questions of it, kind of brought this issue forward, as well as some of the other information from the state. And because I do remember very clearly in the hearings on the new plan, asking, well, was someone going to periodically be cleaning that area out and making sure it's full and ready, or empty, and ready for the next load, should there be some. And it may be just how you worded your comment, but it gives me pause that, other than being directed away from the buildings, there's really nothing to contain and stop the flow and allow it to drain and then be removed before getting into Castle Creek. Is that really the case now, or is that was it just a little bit of nuance in language?
I think, I guess that is the case. That it is the debris flow. Obviously, any debris flow has a certain area where it spreads out once it comes out of the channel. In this case, the channel has been directed to avoid, the buildings on the campus, but then there is an area that has been the historical deposition area for any flow that's come out of there. One of the historical flows jumped, the one in 96 jumped the bank. Right. And so that's why it flowed the way it did. But so this is intended now to direct it to stay in the channel. But then as it gets down to the bottom there, essentially it's that historical deposition area, which is, I don't know, even in 96, that one went on, towards the campus. It didn't make it all the way to Castle Creek. I don't know, I don't know if we've had any documentation of anything actually making it that far. That's the biggest event I think everyone's aware of in recent, time.
Yeah, because as I recall, and it was a while ago we did those hearings, but the MAA property doesn't extend up into Keno Gulch, so these are things coming down onto their property, and it wasn't something we could really require mitigation of that old site or management of that old site, but it really does raise the question, who does own the Keno Gulch property now, and where this is coming from, and is it possible to require some mitigation or some more green closure of the mine from way back when?
Well, I think that when we did the master plan, they did not own most of the property above that. They were able to acquire a portion of the Bishop property, so they now own farther up the gulch, obviously not all the way up the gulch. But in terms of actually what flows down the gulch, I don't think it's a debris flow issue at that point. There's not the concern about the contamination or what might be coming from the mine. The mine workings were all where the campus sits now, where the buildings are. There's one mine opening, I think, on the far side of Keno Gulch, but I don't think that wasn't a concern about where the contamination was coming from. So I think basically my understanding might be more best that the debris flow, stirred up with the contaminated soils and brought things out that would have otherwise stayed in the channel. The improvements they've done now will ensure that a debris flow stays in the channel. Maybe there is some clearing of the channel that has to happen when a debris flow does occur, but not so much the area down below. There will be deposition in there, but that's an area where there is no development occurring and really no activity on the site. So I don't know if that starts to make
That starts to answer. No, I just, again, recall during the hearings, we talked a little about, well, is there revegetation efforts that would slow these sort of, flows if there's a torrential effort, or is there this we could do or that? And it was all kind of, no, we don't own the property, it comes from so high up. And, I do know there were some changes to the Good Samaritan, to add more Good Samaritan measures to the mine cleanup through the EPA this past year. And, again, I don't know if it's a big concern or not, or anything, but whether there should be any sort of stabilization efforts, I just don't know.
I don't think, again, trying to recall, I don't remember anything in terms of, recommendations that anything happened much farther up the channel. I think it was all sort of in the lower area of the channel. The main concern was where a debris flow had jumped out of the channel in the past, and that has now been reinforced and raised. At the time after the event, I don't know if you remember this, they had done some earth moving basically as an emergency measure to try and block that off. That was never engineered. It was never necessarily done properly. So what they've done now is gone back and engineered the improvements to that channel. But I guess I don't think I remember there ever being any thought of, could we get up even higher than that and do other improvements or anything else. I think we just accepted that there will be debris flows at some point in time, and then what we've done is ensure that it's mitigated, right, the safety of the campus, and the debris flow will go, stay in the channel and flow down away from the campus.
Thank you.
Steve?
We're really talking about two different issues here. One, the campus has pretty much solved their problem with future debris flows. Rachel and I are concerned about possible contamination of Castle Creek from somewhere farther up on the mountain that is not the responsibility of the Music Associates. I suggest maybe the Healthy Rivers and Streams Board could take a look at that. It might be something like was done at the Hope Mine for reclaiming that. That could be done somewhere farther up. I don't know if there's other mine tailings up there that are involved, or if it's just like natural surface erosion coming off of. But that's kind of the territory that Healthy Rivers and Streams might be able to look into it and come up with something.
Okay, good suggestion. Michael?
Kurt, when this project is done, are you going to sign off on the safety of the campus, or at least the absence of any hazardous materials?
I don't know if there's a requirement for me to sign off on it. I know the State Health Department will sign off on it. I'm not familiar if there's a place for me. I assume there probably will be. Typically, when I have something like this, it's a sign-off both from my office and the State Health Department.
So the State Health Department will conduct essentially a final inspection and certify that the area is safe?
I don't know that they'll literally do an inspection. They may do an inspection, but certainly they'll have reports filed from the environmental consultants that the state will review, and then they probably make a determination as to whether or not they need to do a site inspection, or whether or not the consultant's information is adequate for them to give approval.
I think we should pursue that because this is a school campus, and these materials, lead and other heavy, are particularly harmful to children. So without a final inspection, I don't know how we know that it's safe or not.
Yeah, and Mike, I don't know if you're thinking about our relationship, for example, with the smuggler area, but this is not in that same kind of process at the federal or state level. And so, I think we need to do probably some more research with Colorado Department of Health and Environment to see what kind of check-off and sign-off that they have versus, our processes where we're really not set up to make that kind of certification.
Right, but in some sense, I think, from my point of view as a commissioner, and I think probably from people who are sending their children to the campus, they would like some reassurance that these materials are contained now in some way, in some form. So whether that comes from the state or from us, it doesn't matter to me, but I think people need reassurance that it's safe.
And I believe the state does do a sign-off that in the areas where the soils have been disturbed and the development has occurred, that it's either been capped properly or that the soils have been removed. So we should have that kind of assurance.
Okay, thank you for the update.
All right, the remaining memos of interest are thank you letters from nonprofit organizations who have received grants through the Healthy Community Fund. I'll just read those off real quick. You have a letter from the Independence Past Foundation, Lift Up, Reach Out and Read Colorado, the Buddy Program, the Aspen Youth Center, the Family Visitor Programs, and the Aspen Valley Ski Club. And that is it for memos of interest.
Good. Okay, we're on to our future agendas.
Give me just a sec. So, just a quick reminder that tomorrow we have our elected officials incident command training. That will be at the Salt Firehouse. Elgibel Firehouse. Fortunately, I brought maps and directions, so you don't have to rely totally on my representations. We'll have a vehicle leaving the courthouse at 11:45 to go down to that. So anyone who would like to carpool will convene here at 11:45 and drive down together. And then I don't have a whole lot else for you. On April 16th, we've added several updates to include, I believe some of these were requested by the board last week, but we're going to be providing you an update on what's happening with our wildfire preparations for the upcoming fire season, an update on our broadband project, and then a more detailed update on facilities projects. We also have the WeCycle update scheduled then. The board had also requested, following on the retreat, some more time with our facilitator on some of our communication tools and such. We were going to try and schedule that in April, but that didn't work out with her schedule or all of ours, and so we have that now scheduled in May. I believe it's May 16th. I'm scrolling through here. I'm sorry, May 13th. We'll be having that follow-up. That is all I have on future agendas.
Okay, anybody else have anything for future agendas?
We don't have it yet, but I'm still trying to determine when we're going to have the Colorado River Basin 1177 for the month of April, whether it's the 22nd or the 29th, because there's a 5th Monday, and it's usually the last Monday, so I'm not sure. If it is the 22nd, I do not believe I'll be able to attend. I'll just be returning from travels. So I'll let the board know as soon as I find out, in case anyone else would like to attend my absence.
Okay. Steve?
Rachel, if it is held when you're gone, I'll make every effort to be there to give a report back.
That'd be great. Steve?
Anybody else have anything for future agendas? Seeing none, we'll move on to board membership reports. We'll start with Northwest Column. Rob?
Yeah, we, pull it up here. We had a meeting last week, a couple of interesting things. Get to the right page here. It was a short call-in meeting, but there's some interesting developments, one of which is that we're putting out an RFP. The board of Northwest COG gave approval to put out an RFP to become the Colorado Health Benefit Exchange headquarters for Region 12 plus a couple of additional counties, Routt, Moffett, Rio Blanco, Rio Blanco and Garfield counties, which would be basically, it would be a grant that would be funded federally to provide information to people to manipulate through the Obamacare exchanges and stuff like that. It would be, it's a pretty big grant. It would be an addition of, I think, 3 or 4 staff members into the Northwest COG headquarters that would be overseen by Northwest COG, but kind of run separately. So it's kind of a win-win. There's space at the COG headquarters right now, and so we're putting out an RFP for that. Hopefully that'll be something that we bring into Northwest COG going forward. Some other developments, we did just get our first grant for the Economic Development District. We got close to $55,000, which will kind of start us off on some informational outreach stuff in the Northwest COG Economic Development District, which is a newly founded part of Northwest COG, of which I'm chairing. So this will kind of put our outreach out there for a bunch of different things over the next year. We also just got a grant for the Regional Transportation Coordination Council of $25,000 from CDOT to start to put in some call center software information for the one of the goals that the Regional Resort Region has been overseeing, which is that Transportation Council. And that's the rest of what we did was kind of wrapped up last year's budget, and we had our audit done with a new auditing firm that came in tremendously under budget, and we should see that in our next meeting, so, which we're required to have a full audit every year, so.
Okay, Rachel?
Yeah, Rob, I'm wondering if you could, if it hasn't really happened yet, but request to be on the schedule of one of your next meetings, the agenda, the statewide transportation funding issue and how they're looking at, formulating a ballot question.
What you were talking about.
What I was talking about before. But it's just, I did talk with Steve Barwick from the city and say, hey, be sure and get CAST involved more. And I also kind of alerted Dan Blankenship to how to connect with the woman from Club 20 who's doing it. But it just seemed to me very deficient that Club 20 is kind of the only group they're depending on to attend some of these meetings and represent the West Slope interest in this. And so I think Northwest COG could really play a role.
Specifically in the allocation of the tax and how it would affect.
Well, what the tax would be, should it be gasoline tax, should it be general sales tax, that whole new formula for sharebacks being based just on population, not on lane miles and population. And some things like that. As I said before, it's formative stages, but this would be the time to really get in on the ground floor before the train really leaves the station.
And have someone from Northwest COG's office attending those meetings and really reporting back to us.
And getting a sense of your board, how you guys feel about some of those alternatives. That'd be great.
Okay, Rural Resort Region?
The only thing was that $25,000 grant to help fund some of the projects that are going on there. That's all that was reported from that.
Okay. Core, it's interesting, the Energy Smart Program grant is coming to a close shortly, the end of August, and so we're actually going to have a retreat next week to talk about how we can continue that program, because it's been very, very successful for the county as well as the other counties. And so we'll be looking at different opportunities, and at some point shortly after that retreat, we'll have a presentation by Core in terms of some of the suggestions that we've come up with. And the Green Key grant applications are due May 1st, so next month, and these grants are available to fund any renewable energy installations. So if you're interested in that, you can contact the Core office for more information.
George, Will the Energy Smart program, does it have kind of a summary of what's happened to date? And if so, would you consider forwarding that to me? I think it'd be very helpful for some of my research I'm doing for this adaptation conference.
Okay, great. Okay, yeah, we do have that information, and I'll have Mona get that to you.
That'd be great. Thank you.
George?
Yes?
Did you talk any about Core working with the town of Snowmass Village on some energy projects there?
Cora's working on a possible contract with Snowmass Village on some work up there. I don't know the specifics, but they are discussing.
I heard they were doing something. I was just curious if you had any more on that.
Yeah. Okay, QQ.
Well, we haven't had a meeting since our last report. We try to meet just kind of quarterly. But I did go down to Denver on Sunday to be able to testify in support of Gail Schwartz's bill, Senate Bill 019, which QQ is supporting. It is a bill that would allow for greater water conservation by irrigators, appropriators, people who have water rights who would like to participate in any sort of kind of local or sub-basin effort to keep more water in the streams during a drought. It's essentially a hold harmless, that you would not have those reduced years counted against you if you ever were to go to water court to sell or change your consumptive rights to a different use. As it is now, they'll look at how much water you took each year, going back as far as they have a decent record, and then average them. And so maybe even if your water rights said you get 100 CFS on any given day, you might have only used 78, on average. And so that would be all you would have the right to sell or to change its use. And if people reduce their water take to help out with the stream health or the ecology, or maybe even so other junior water users downstream can actually get some for their fields, that would count against you. That would be injurious to your water rights. And the attorneys would tell you, your water attorneys would tell you, don't take less than your share. Take your full due no matter what does to the stream, no matter what. And so this bill has now passed the Senate committee and Senate floor unanimously, and it did receive a unanimous vote of support from the House Ag Committee yesterday. So we'll see how it goes when it moves to the full House floor. But that seems to be the biggest project. They're also, as QQ, commenting on a number of the oil and gas bills that we heard mentioned last week when the COGA folks visited us. And I think the QQ interest is twofold. One, they have some communities that have direct impacts within them. And then the other is QQ has always been very protective and vigilant about maintaining local control, and that boundary between where is it preempted by state or federal agencies, and to watch and make sure there's no erosion of 1041 powers. And there's, that's kind of mixed up with these oil and gas regs at some level. So they're going to be soliciting other people to continue to testify on some of those bills. And I've also heard there's still maybe another 6 or 8 that are out there. And, it's really challenging when people just bring all these late bills in and the legislature barely has, 5-6 working weeks to deal with those. But that seems to be, really all that's going on with QQ right now.
Okay. CCI.
CCI hasn't had a meeting since a month ago or more, before the DC trip, and they're having their MES meeting coming up on April 19th. I'm not going to be attending. Steve's going to attend on behalf of the county. I don't know that we're really losing any battles on any major bills right now. I don't know if you have more of an update on any of that.
A couple of things that weren't necessarily from about the bills, but One, the state has $10.3 million available for wildfire mitigation, and I thought it might be applicable for the work being done on Smuggler Mountain. The caveat from this is that you need to utilize the products that are removed during the mitigation for some kind of she said, biomass energy or going into sawmills or something. And a lot of what they're doing up on Smuggler so far, I think, has just been mulching the stuff, which probably wouldn't qualify for that money, but I think it's something that the Open Space and Trails should probably look into. I guess they're the ones mostly doing that mitigation work. There was an interesting thing about the cost of election, and there is some effort to kind of have a standardized cost of running the elections, or standardized system, so across the whole state everybody's using the same system in order to have cost savings through getting all the same kind of equipment and whatever. And in Ouray County, last fall they spent $50 per voter on their election. So each person who cast a vote, it cost the county $50, and I thought that was pretty interesting. I'm curious what our costs is in Pickett County, but they're a smaller county and they have to jump through do all the bells and whistles just like we do.
Yeah, some of the measures seem to be very political, I would say, at least. And from the Clerks Association, I'm not saying they're political, but the forces they're dealing with may be political. One of the bills is to say that if there's not a primary contender in a given party's race in a primary, that they don't have to send out ballots to those folks. So, but others who are like, well, if my name is on there and I'm the only person running for that district and there's no primary, it should still be sent out because it's name recognition and they want any little PR they can get about it. It really didn't seem to make a lot of sense. So bills like that, and I'm so glad you brought that up, Steve, because I had emailed Janice when it was first discussed, and she sent me kind of lengthy detail on this other bill about kind of uniform balloting. And I think it might be valuable to ask Janice to come in and kind of give us an update of what the Clerks Association is thinking. On the one hand, they're very dollars and cents driven, as they should be. On the other hand, there may be other considerations that communities may have, because the look at going to all one vendor, I think you really get locked into that vendor for a long time. And having one state certified electoral voting box, if there are problems with it, and everyone in the state is buying in, and everyone has to have the same type of ballot style, it just gives me a little bit of heebie-jeebies. Janice's explanation gave me a lot more comfort in that, but I do think it's just worth noting for the public to be able to understand that why anyone is advocating we go to an all-one type of voting system in the state. There are county commissioners on the task force that's working on it, and they are maintaining very high standards, such as paper trail and how machines can be verified as being hack-proof. But there's always other issues that may get tacked on to the bill when it's being heard, and that's the challenging part. This should be very separate from issues of like, can a clerk choose to mail to people who were inactive in the last election or not? Or does the Secretary of State control that, or does the local clerk control that? And issues such as how long can the clerk have early voting? Is that something that's a local control question? When we say we'd like 2 weeks and we'll fund 2 weeks, or if the state says no, there's only 1 week allowed of early voting. And so, hopefully it doesn't cross over from a pure how do we manage elections in terms of the equipment and the ballot style to bigger questions, which the Clerks Association has advocated in the past, that all elections everywhere all the time should be all mail-in ballots. which is not the policy for generals right now, and it's also kind of a local choice on the off-season elections. So it does bear watching, and it'd be good to keep our voters informed on that.
There were a couple more fiscal things that are of interest. One has to do with the Affordable Health Care Act, and they're estimating that there will be a need of 141 full-time employees at the county level, just for expanding Medicaid eligibility across the whole state. A lot of that's going to be in the big Front Range areas where there's a lot more people. It might not affect us at all, but it could. The sequester could have a couple of effects on us. The two that were mentioned, that CDOT's estimating they'll have $20 to $30 million less money available for projects, and that's going to filter down on our local level, I'm sure, somewhere along the line. And then in Health and Human Services, they were estimating that a lot of, like, the Meals on Wheels program and the transportation programs for taking seniors to doctor's appointments and things like that, the funding from that is going to be basically gone. So seniors will be suffering because of the sequester.
And we've already seen our cutback in payment in lieu of taxes by about $60,000 this year. So we'll have to see how that goes in future years as well.
Okay, thanks. Club 20.
Club 20 just had its regular board meeting and day of presentations, the end of March 22nd, 23rd, I was attending. I can still only thank John Peacock and Charlotte for keeping it secret that I was going to get embarrassed up there and have an award, but that was very well appreciated. Club 20 is soliciting members, participants who would like to go to Washington, D.C. with their Washington, D.C. trip. They only do that every other year. They don't do it every year, and that's going to be in the first week of May. I've pretty much already said, I'm overcommitted with travel and was just in D.C. with NACO, so I'm not going to attend that. But I have passed that along to Chris Selden's office and let him consider if he, thinks that's the right opportunity for him, or maybe they'll go earlier for some of our issues. But it is always a chance to build some bridges and meet people with different points of view, and they usually are able to line up some pretty good office visits with some of the key departments that they participate in, telecommunications, BLM, things like that. They're just kind of setting up for their ongoing summer work sessions. Their little working groups are what bring resolutions forward to the broader board. They're doing well financially. Their director, been almost 2 years now, Bonnie, is doing great, doing really good work. I updated the board already about the little special session they had with Don Young. Is it Don Young? Yeah, Don Hunt, the director of CDOT. I get those two names confused. That was earlier in March. And I guess I would say that, there's always resolutions that they have come forward that are not lined up with what Pickens County's point of view is on a lot of issues. Their new chair for this year and next year, has really been stressing and trying to emphasize how much Club 20 works with and tries to work for agricultural interests and water interests and telecommunications and healthcare and all sorts of things other than just oil and gas, but that still seems to be a very predominant issue for a lot of their members and a lot of their larger sponsors. But they did renew a lot of resolutions from their Public Lands Committee. Their policy is that within every 5 years, all resolutions of a given committee should be reviewed for accuracy and timeliness. And updated. And so although I argued my best, the group did reaffirm a resolution they've had on the books since '95 to support the transfer of all federal public lands to the state. And so I don't really agree with that. And I did ask that we at least do some sort of fiscal analysis of what it would cost the state to manage all those lands and be in charge of all the wildfires and the roads and so on and so forth. And, I don't know that they're really going to do that. Others are just saying, well, look, if I got all my federal lease money back to my county, it would be $20-30 million. I'd be happy to manage that. But, should those lands be returned to the state, I have a feeling a lot of that money would end up down in Denver and not necessarily flow back in any greater percentage to the counties than it does now. But we'll just have to see. So again, there's many issues we don't agree, and sometimes there's ones we do.
Okay, Colorado River Roundtable.
They did not meet in March. I'm still trying to nail down what is the meeting for them this month. And I believe the next IBCC Interbasin Combat Committee, which is kind of an offshoot of that or overseer group to that, I believe is going to be June 5th. So I'm going to try to reconfirm that, but I would be attending that if that's June 5th.
Okay. Rudolph Water Power.
We had a meeting last Thursday. Unfortunately, there wasn't a quorum, so we couldn't. A lot of us attended and couldn't do any official business, but there was discussion about the aquatic nuisance program, and there was some concern about not getting enough money from the Forest Service because of the sequester. So, but I just heard this morning that the Forest Service is going to kick in $15,000, which is approximately half of the program. So it looks like that program will continue. So that's good news. Sharon Clark was there. They're going to have some students from the university, graduate students from the University of Michigan, help with a conservation program, or at least identify conservation opportunities within the Warren Fork drainage. So that's also good. So because they had the University of Michigan students 3 years ago, I think, help with the water plan, and that was very successful. So that's it for for Ruapa.
And then Accra?
Accra, we had a presentation from Houston Cowan on the Challenge Aspen, and that was very interesting, all the history of that. It goes back a long time. And that was about it for Accra. And RAFTA, the BRT program is proceeding. They're very happy to finalize the BRT stops here in the underpass. So that's a big challenge, however, because they want to be up and running by fall. So we'll see what happens. Anything else at RAFTA? I don't really think
I'm just trying to think, but
there wasn't anything really substantial at RAFTA, mostly internal stuff. So.
Okay, Nordic Council?
I went to the Nordic Council meeting on March 20th, and there were sort of three main things. One, Tom Stiles, who has been doing the Nordic Trails up in Snowmass Village and the Owl Creek Trail, has retired, and they gave him a recognition ceremony. There's a young guy who's doing the grooming now, who's very energetic and has been doing a good job. They approved $2,000 to the Aspen Valley Ski Club to pay most of their deficit in hosting the Super Tour event, which brings a lot of different ski racers from all over the state come every year to races they hold on the high school tracks. And Toby Morse was asked to, in the future, put in a funding request ahead of time instead of after the fact that when they run the deficit. But it is a kind of a showcase thing to really highlights our trail system here on a statewide basis. So we felt that it was well worth putting $2,000 in to help on that. And a lot of discussion about the problem of snow bikes going on the Nordic Trail system, which is starting to happen now. The usual conflict is people walking on trails or taking their dogs on parts that they're not supposed to. And now sometimes they are finding the bicycle tracks out on the ski trails. And this is going to be more and more of an issue as time goes on with nobody has any solutions at this point, but it might get to the point where there will have to be designated bicycling routes on some part of the trail system in the winter where they're prevented from going on the road, the ski track areas. So that's something I'm sure we'll hear more about in the future.
Okay, we did not meet with the Intermountain TPR. So that's it for board reports, and we'll move on to open discussion.
Well, I'd like to start off with some introductions. We have two new employees that we'd like you have an opportunity to meet. First, we have John Lloyd, who's our new Chief Technology Officer.
Good afternoon.
Hi.
Should I come to the table?
Yeah, I remember
Hot seat.
I want to check for wires and pick the appropriate one.
Make sure they're all work.
Yeah.
If you see my heels go up in the air.
Well, John, would you mind just telling us a little bit about yourself for the viewing public and the board?
Thank you. I've been in the IT business and the business for almost 30 years. I've worked in high-tech startups, I founded high-tech startups, I've worked in large organizations, I've worked in smaller organizations. My focus has been most recently in the public sector. It's my preferred area of operation, in counties in particular. I understand how counties work, I understand the dynamics between the various responsibilities and roles. And my goal in every job I've held is to focus on people. It's people first, business process second, and finally technology comes in third place. You have to have the people trained and made competent, you have to have the business processes optimized, then you spend money on technology to support them. I've been very successful doing that, and I think it's a good approach.
Well, we're really excited to have John on board. His office is on the third floor, formerly the third floor conference room. We've cannibalized that, and you now have a new conference table in the boardroom, which will now become a meeting room also. But we're really excited to have John. He has a lot of experience with county government, and we're excited once he learns where to hang his coat for him to lead us in some new directions.
Good. Well, without putting you on the spot, does any board members have any questions at all?
Welcome.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
I'll defer to the next candidate here.
Thanks, John. Now, I know I have Janice here with William Mast, our new elections director, manager.
Thank you. I'd like to introduce to everyone here and our audience on television, Bill on TV, William Mast. And Bill comes to us from Montrose County. I'm thrilled, and he's eager to use his skills and abilities to further the integrity of Pickens County elections for our electorate that we all appreciate. And Bill's background is political science, and he brings with us 5 years of election experience. This is the first time in the history of Pickens County that we've hired anyone with election experience. So we are fortunate to have Bill. He brings with us Colorado law, election law. He brings with us strong technical acumen. He also provides for us very strong process management skills, which we're fortunate to have. So Bill started yesterday, and if you see Bill, anybody sees Bill and Dwight will be training with Bill this week, and Dwight's last day is perhaps by the end of this week, maybe into a little bit of next week, so we can, familiarize Bill with our new voting system. But I am very fortunate, we are very fortunate to have such great people work for Pickett County.
Yeah, welcome, and I understand Dwight won't be going too far too soon. He's just going to go across the street and help the city with the municipality elections coming up in May.
And actually, we asked Bill if he could go over and help and do some hands-on, so he's got experience with the system right away.
Yeah, well, that's great.
Throw him right into the water.
There you go.
Good.
Well, welcome aboard.
Well, thank you. I'm thrilled to be here.
So has the reputation of Pickett County preceded knowledge of some of the issues?
I think coming from Montrose, I'm seeing the other side of the coin, but it's been a very lovely community to come down to so far, and I imagine it's going to stay that way.
Good. Well, congratulations for both of you, and we look forward to working with you.
Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Okay, the only other open discussion item that I have for you is you may have seen in the paper today that it used to be the Aspen Valley Health Alliance, it's now the Valley Health Alliance. Under the leadership of the hospital, has hired an interim executive director to really start to provide some structure around these goals of trying to work with the 5 employers to develop strategies to reduce healthcare costs and work with providers on protocols that will do that, as well as compensation philosophies for the providers for adopting those protocols. So hopefully with that structure, we're going to be able to bring her in. Marty Edwards is the interim director while they go through a recruitment process for a nonprofit, but hopefully over the next few months we'll be able to get Marty in to do an update for you on how that is progressing.
So on that topic, John, so the Valley Health Association, VHA,
yes,
now it's a non-profit organization, so they're going to be setting up a board of directors. How will that process work? And professionals on that board? Or?
Well, it depends if you consider people like me professionals, George. It's going to be pretty much the same setup as the community group that came together informally to start having these discussions. We'll have a similar set of representatives, I think, initially on that board. In addition, though, we'll probably have more providers, so primary care doctors, I believe. And so the board initially gets appointed, and then there's an adoption of bylaws and such for what the terms are and the appointment of future board members. But initially, I would continue to participate in that role as well as Nan and the other representatives that have been in discussions about how we can work together better. What we haven't had is any real structure. We've had a lot of really great discussions, but we haven't had a way to really grab onto those ideas and move them forward. We haven't had any real staff dedicated or what have you. And so what the nonprofit structure will do is a couple of things. One, it allows us to create an organizational structure where we can actually house some of the programs that we'd like to see started up in the community, whether that be an alternative compensation program that rewards participating providers for delivering on health versus delivering on services, or whether that is providing joint wellness programs that the participating entities can buy into so that we achieve some economies of scale instead of each entity doing their own, to practice models and coaching for the doctors' practices. So there's a lot that can fit under that umbrella, which is our next phase to really look at.
Great. And then I cut you off. Did you have something else for open discussion?
I have one more thing. I think you got it.
I'm sorry, Michael.
Has Valley View Hospital been invited to sort of listen in or do anything like that?
Yeah, we've got two parallel efforts going on there's a regional healthcare alliance as well as this Valley Healthcare Alliance, which has been more focused on the 5 employers. But we've actually been having the regional healthcare alliance discussions, which has included what we're doing up here at Valley View Hospital, and those have been happening once a month. So, and that was one of the reasons for the name change, is really our lives covered as well as our provider base is valley-wide, not just, up valley, mid-valley. It's traveling back and forth, and so we do have a valley-wide focus, and we are including Valley View. They haven't come to the table. Certainly Aspen Valley Hospital's been, I'd say, a far more enthusiastic and involved partner at this point. But we've certainly been keeping Valley View in the discussions and hoping that we'll be able to bring them on board.
And what about Grand River Hospital, Rifle?
We haven't gone down that far yet.
Not down that far.
Yeah.
But I think, you should let those entities know that you're having these discussions, and they're all welcome to sit in on these discussions.
We've actually included the Colorado Health Network, which actually includes all Western Slope counties, as well as the Beacon Project, which is a 18-county region on the Western Slope. So we've been sharing our ideas and also getting ideas from other communities as far as how to take the next step. So we're very much in tune with what you're talking about making sure we're building a network across the Western Slope.
Yeah, that's great, John. Thank you so much for doing that.
Yeah. And the last thing, I just wanted to update you on our most recent discussions on the Health and Human Services nonprofit funding. First, we have received word that the City of Aspen will be continuing to fund the nonprofits at their 2012 levels in 2013. So all the nonprofits that received grants from the City of Aspen in 2012 will be receiving the same grant amounts in 2013, and they'll be sending out notice to those nonprofits. We still have to have discussions about what's going to happen in future years, so 2014 and beyond. The managers did meet, and we had a discussion about bringing both Snowmass and Basalt into the discussions to see if there's some way that we can look at this with all the entities. And we still need to have more discussions about that, but certainly there's some willingness to continue talking about it. There wasn't obviously any financial commitments or such made, but we're continuing to move forward on that, at least for 2013. It sounds like we have some certainty, and we'll have to continue our discussions to see what's going to happen in future years with that funding.
Yeah, and it should be noted that, given that we're into election season again for May, that the Health and Human Services pod is hosting a candidate forum. I don't know the exact date, but it's going to be regarding the future funding of the Health and Human Service agencies, specifically from the city's point of view. So I think that's going to be a really interesting candidate forum and issue for those who are running.
Great. I'd love to know the day of that once you hear about it, or if you hear about it.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. Board, anyone have anything for open discussion? Rachel?
Very small one. When I was washing the car off last night at Public Works, the water pressure was really low on the hose. It almost seemed like a garden hose, and so I don't know what's going on with that.
Anybody else have anything for open discussion? Okay, we can move on, unless there's a board wish to take a short break, or we just want to finish up for the day.
I may need a minute to get Charlotte.
Charlotte's here. I was even moving back and forth. Okay, so we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is citizen board renewals, and Charlotte Anderson is here, who's done a great job in terms of organizing and overseeing what amounts to about 18 citizen boards. 19 citizen boards. Over 100 volunteers that come and go, and it's a big task. So I think want to thank you, and you're doing a great job in trying to keep this organized for us.
Thank you. I just want to answer any questions you might have about your packet material and inform you about a couple of changes that occurred between Friday and today. Of course, you realize that Jim Richardson withdrew his application. Janae apologized for not being here. She's been rescheduled for April 16th. And then Ellen Hunt, who is an applicant for the Citizen Grant Review, her interview has been moved to 5/28 due to a conflict.
Okay. We've got resignations in here and sort of a whole list of those who are reapplying as well. So I guess I'll just open up for board. If you have any questions for Charlotte, Rachel?
Well, it's really just a comment, but I want to tell you know that I heard a radio advertisement yesterday for translator board appointees, and it came out really good. And it, I applaud you for finding new ways to reach out.
Well, Pat Bingham and Jody have been working on that, I believe, but that's good to know that you're hearing it.
Yeah.
Michael?
I just want to thank Charlotte. Jack Hatfield brought this up a while back as he wasn't quite sure he was going to be reappointed or blah, blah, blah. And it's changed into, in Charlotte's hands, into a really well-organized, much more vast operation than I'd anticipated at first. And I think, at least thanks to Charlotte, we finally have control of the citizen board program here, and it's really wonderful. Thank you so much, Charlotte. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I saw some interesting comments in here. I'm not sure, how we may try to facilitate it, but some of the comments from several of the applicants for renewal was to see if there was an opportunity for the boards to meet either with the BOCC or amongst themselves just to further enhance the communication and understanding of all that goes on with the county amongst the different boards and how they may, on the notes to them, they may be, interacting or overlapping in some of those issues. So that may be something we could look at as an opportunity for those who are interested in attending from different boards, just to have a work session on that.
And I could gather meeting times and dates for you if you like of each board. And
Rachel?
I mean, I don't know if this is what you're implying, but I can see making something happen that might be a 2 or 2.5 hour session on one of our work sessions, and all the boards be invited, as opposed to us trying to meet with each of 19 different boards.
No, that's what I meant.
I mean, that's, and I think it'd be worth putting time into that and not doing something so hurried.
Yeah.
But, most people would be able to stay for some or part of it, but have a really well-structured meeting and be able to go over more of what the different functions of each board are and how they may overlap, and, what are the county's goals and what are we doing at this level with those. And, I think that was a great idea. I mean, I've talked before about whether our board should try to meet once a year or once every other year with each board, and we've never really had the scheduled time to do that, so.
Maybe we could tie that in with our annual appreciation for our board members, because that always doesn't seem to get the attendance we want. So perhaps if we combine these and people can come and go, and maybe an opportunity to combine both of those together.
Yeah, maybe it's more of an open house than a meeting type thing, or a little of both.
And we may need to change the time of that appreciation picnic also, because it seems like off-season, people are kind of...
Yeah, so it's just an idea. Okay, good. Any other questions for Charlotte and Steve?
More comments. I thought the most fascinating thing was reading the comments from the different board members. And some of the boards are really underutilized. They don't have, one hasn't had anything to do for 2 years, so we have people hanging out there with nothing to do. And I was trying to think of a solution for that to perhaps have people serve on two different boards. If one of the boards is very underutilized, maybe those people could fill slots on other boards where there are openings, or in the case of the Ag Building Review Board, has only met twice since it was formed, and I was at both of those meetings. They haven't met at all. But then the Weed Advisory Board is struggling to get people interested in it. Maybe we should consider making an agricultural board that could handle the weed advisory stuff and ag building stuff, and could look at the greenhouse regulations or something like that. Just tossing out an idea on how to fill slots that are, left open. And I totally agree with the idea of having like an annual summit of the different boards with us in attendance, because I think that communication is essential. And I remember going to the appreciation things and seeing people that are on boards that I didn't know were on boards, and it's like each individual board doesn't know what the other ones are necessarily doing. And I think that would be beneficial to have that communication. And I thought also it would be really nice to send out a thank you letter. And I really liked the way that the Independence Past Foundation sent their thank you letter to us for their funding, where a whole bunch of board members wrote comments on there. I thought that was really pretty classy, and I think we should send a thank you to those people who are resigning at this point, just thanking them for their service. And I think we ought to all each sign the thing and put a little note on there, just like the Independence Past Foundation did.
Great. Rachel?
Yeah, I think your idea is worth investigating, Steve. I'm not so sure that sometimes people don't deliberately sign up for boards that only meet a specialized interest, such as weeds or whatever. But it does strike me that, maybe we could put out a message to some of our local environmental groups that we're searching for people on the Weed Advisory Board, like the Aspen Center for Environmental Studies or Roaring Fork Conservancy, or I'm trying to think of other groups that deal with land and weed and water and invasive species issues, and just let them know that there's openings and see if they'd like to post. We tend to try to post more business ones and let the ACRA know, but maybe we need a different outreach for the Weed Advisory Board.
Okay, well, thanks, Charlotte.
Really great work.
Just need a decision as to whether to prepare a reza for the next regular meeting on these renewals, or do you need some time to?
Yeah, for renewals, unless, I guess, we've always asked if there's any particular boards or applicants we want to re-interview.
Well, isn't Hop applying for a renewal, and we still haven't interviewed Renee, so, I mean, not Renee, Janae. So,
Right, so that would be one that I think would not be part of that. There are two boards, I think, where you wanted to automatically do interviews, as I recall, and that's the planning and zoning, as well as open space and trails, where you wanted to interview all renewing board members.
And wasn't Healthy Rivers part of that too?
Their terms don't expire until September, so we'll begin advertising in July. So if you want to interview, they're reapplying board.
Part of that renewal process, interviewing and renewal process, is to get feedback on how the board is working and what improvements could be made and so forth and so on. So that was the value of interviewing renewals, it seems to me. So I'd like to continue, at least on those boards, to continue to interview renewals.
And the other times we were going to interview was when there was someone else interested in applying for one of those seats. So, but that's not, we don't have any of those situations. Except for open space.
Yeah, open space.
That's the only one. So, yeah, I think we can go ahead and prepare those resos.
Except for the open
next
space.
week.
Okay, and so those would be for Renee West as the joint housing office, and all the others on the list, except, because I was trying to think, George, but didn't we re-interview Monty Thompson already on P&Z? I think we had one of those kind of renewal discussions with him. So that would be one that could go on the resolution as well. But the other, is it Michelle Murta, would still need to be re-interviewed. And I just want to be clear.
I think that's correct, yeah.
Okay.
So Michelle and Mirta?
Yeah, they're renewing, and they are P&Z, and those are the ones we wanted to interview with. Monty, we've already done that.
Okay.
And we had decided on Renee last week.
Yeah, Renee was actually on the reso because you guys asked for an amendment.
Oh, that's right, we did pop it on there, you're right. I was thinking of the hard copy at first, but, okay.
And I don't know if the bylaws need to be checked because their terms expire April 13th. And there's a P&Z meeting, this is for Michelle and Murta, and there's a P&Z meeting on the 14th of May. And if we're going to interview them, they're not going to be interviewed and reappointed until after that. I'm not sure if the bylaws allow for them to continue on that board.
I believe, and we'll double check, but I believe when we looked at this before, their terms continue until a replacement is appointed or they're reappointed.
And I would just also note that Ben Ganschaff is resigning, which we didn't know last week, and he's been a great addition to the board, and we'll miss him, but we need to fill that seat as well.
Right. Okay, and then also Alan Feldman, here he withdrew his application and then he is throwing it back in there, so we need a decision on.
This is the one that's been like 5 months in the
And we actually don't have to fill Ben's seat because we just had this conversation a week ago or so that we decided we would appoint up to 9 members. And if there's opportunity, someone wishing to apply, we certainly should interview, but it's not that we have to fill that seat.
Yeah, I just, mainly to put it on the website that there is an open seat if someone wants to apply.
Right, yeah. Okay, anything else?
Alan.
I'm thumbs up for Alan.
And I would imagine he is reapplying because it's been reviewed with our staff to make sure there's really not conflict with how our translator board regs read versus serving on a nonprofit board of a station that uses the translator system.
The direction of the board when we had the discussion regarding the makeup of the board was that board members of nonprofits were allowable as translator board members.
Okay.
Particularly on the public TV and public radio stations, because they have first priority of placement.
And they're not going to run into conflict with the remaining spots. I would support Alan as well.
Also, just a question, all these different people are asking to be renewed. Are we going to have each of them come in for an interview, or someone seemed like just a blanket?
No, that's what we've just been discussing. We're just going to re-interview those we named for P&Z, for open space and trails, for healthy rivers. And if there was a case where there was another applicant who wanted to apply for that seat.
And why specifically for those 3 boards? Or is it in their bylaws somehow?
No, there was just a discussion that we decided because of the broad span of responsibilities that each of those boards have and the fiscal responsibilities of open space and healthy rivers as well.
Okay, so that's my question. That answers it.
Yeah, and I have noticed in here, Steve, this kind of renewal board application has questions. And so any of us could kind of call up if we wanted to have a more in-depth interview with anyone, but we'd ask them for feedback through the questions when they're putting in their renewal application. So we could say, you know, I saw some really funny things here, I want to hear what he really has to say, and ask that they do an actual interview.
Yeah. I read all of their comments. I thought the funniest one was Jim Lewis's, where he wants me back on the weed board. How could he improve? But, yeah, I'm happy with, you know, reading their applications, and some people wrote really good comments, and others just kept saying no comments or whatever. So
yeah.
I thought that was interesting.
Okay, that's all? You got what we need, Sharon?
I think so.
Good, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And with that, we can conclude our work session for today.
One last thing, I just wanted to give the board a reminder that the movie Chapman is Thursday night at the Wheeler Opera House. If anyone would like to go, you have that invite from last week, which was handed out. And I got a voicemail from the producer, Doug Weiser, when I got home last night from Denver, say he'd heard back from Rob and appreciated that, and, you know, just to urge you all to come, he'd love to see you.
Good. Okay. Thank you guys folks. We're done for the day.
That includes you.